Hush, hush, sweet Charlotte, Charlotte, don't you cry.
Hello, welcome from Mickey and me from Castle Goring. Mickey's feeling particularly affectionate this afternoon. I'm sorry about that. Oh, Mix, yes. Well, today I am going to try to revert to questions and observations. I have got a fascinating communication from somebody who's closely involved with the royal household at Windsor Castle. I will start with that, but before starting, we'll have a little precursor, and I will just briefly offer my sympathies to poor Meghan and Harry, because the bloodletting has started, and they obviously had absolutely no idea that when you're playing power politics, that you better be careful what you're doing, because if you are going to be playing power politics against genuine powers, you might actually come a cropper. They have terrible loss. They have lost Catherine Saint-Laurent, who is their chief of staff, who they inherited from Bill and Melinda Gates. Now, all of that appointment is covered in my book, Meghan and Harry, The Real Story, and the significance of it, and what it really meant for Meghan and Harry to be having a former employee, more than an employee actually, because she ran the foundations, and she has now decamped. Of course, what some of you may not know, but I certainly know, and many of you will know, that in the civilized world, things are done very civilly. You know, nobody's going to say that she's jumped ship. What they're going to say is that she has stepped down. Well, she stepped down. Surprise, surprise. No surprise to me. I think Meghan and Harry are going to find down the line that because of the nasty, vicious, treacherous, and destructive way they went about putting themselves on the map, that they will have alienated a great many people who actually want to keep in with the powers that be. Power brokers are used to dealing with each other. They are not used to having their apple cart upset by minor third-rate ensemble players and their dolt husbands. So wait for it, because this is just going to be the start of distancing. I mean, I actually think it's going to be a miracle if Meghan and Harry manage to pull off the hat trick that they had the ambition for, which was that she would become President of the United States of America, and they would become the most potent, acknowledged royal couple on earth. Sprinkling gold dust everywhere, how important they were, how wonderful they were. Look at the Sussexes, Harry and Diana Mactu, rolled into Mother Teresa, now has become Meghan, the most wonderful human being who ever lived. Well, they've miscalculated, because The truth is, Meghan and Harry, if you're going to do the dirty until you've arrived, don't do it visibly. That's one lesson they could have learned and should have learned. Anyway, the other good news of the day, well, actually from yesterday, is that The Sun in England has published the photograph of Harry and Meghan's wedding certificate, which shows as plain as the nose on your face or mine that Meghan lied when she said that she and Harry were married 3 days before they got married. It's there in black and white, as I'm pretty sure she already knew. And what actually I have to say I find fascinating with Meghan is that this is a woman who is so arrogant and so full of herself and so full of the brown stuff that she actually thinks if she declaims and declares that this is a fact, I was married 3 days before I got married. Nobody knows it, now everybody knows it. I've confided it in you, dear Oprah. I mean, did she really think that nobody was going to check to see whether she was speaking the truth or not? In one of the many misremembrances that she managed to come up with? I mean, I really think Meghan and Harry need to seek medical help. I really do. I think it's almost embarrassing because, I mean, obviously if she declares the fact to be the fact and nobody challenges her, it's accepted as a fact. But if she is challenged, the facts are revealed. And now we come to a major revelation. The person in question has provided their name, as will become self-evident. It's a woman, and she's American. I have chosen to withhold her name because I think it would be indecorous of me, indeed almost abusive of me, to impart her name. So here goes. One very important point to make when you're talking about Meghan's behavior at the dress fitting: treating a little child like this is inexcusable. It's child abuse. Well, that's your opinion. You are certainly entitled to it. Many people would agree. For legal reasons, I could not say that I agreed with that opinion because I'm not making any accusations. So, Meghan's not the only one who knows her way around the law. So, to continue, I know this story, she's referring to the previous videos, story from Eva Torok. I know this story has loads of truth to it because it's very similar to the stories I'd heard from two young women who worked directly with Meghan. My two stepchildren went to school at St. George's School at Windsor Castle with Beatrice and Eugenie. The two princesses' good friends soon grew up and went to work for the royal family, unfortunately ending up within Meghan and Harry's household. I remember my stepdaughter calling, saying her friends were in tears as they were being treated so horribly by Meghan, in ways that you describe Charlotte and Kate were being treated. It seems Meghan likes to pit people against each other, especially those who don't put her on a pedestal and don't respond to her every demand. Meghan will manipulate others to gang up on those she doesn't like. She creates a posse of supporters and can't stand on her own, and hurts those who see right through her games and toxic behavior. At the same time, my husband's good friend, who has worked directly at a high level for Prince Charles in his office, was also saying similar things. I won't name him, but he knows Charles very, very well, and was shocked at what a diva Meghan was, and stated at a dinner party I'd attended right before the Christmas holidays, that's a few Christmases ago, that she was upsetting everyone and was a vile person. There was never anything in big block capitals said about her race, which I agree with you that she's basically white and her little bit of black heritage is being weaponized. But it was all about her terrible attitude and treatment of people around her. Now, this was way before Harry and Meghan left the royal family and before all of this news stroke interview came out. And I was asked to never speak a word of it to protect Meghan. Well, I can vouch for that, because I've heard from many different people that they were asked to keep a lid on things. So these accusations are true. I can say this with 100% certainty, and Meghan should be ashamed of herself. And as an American living in England, I'm embarrassed for her and how she's represented Americans. I think, my dear, misrepresented would be a better word. Not that I'm intending to scold. Meghan and I grew up 20 miles from one another, and I can say that I know this type of California girl, totally narcissistic and self-serving, unable to look within and respect others. It's all about her and the Hollywood dream of fame and fortune. But there are some amazing people from California and the US who are just as appalled as you, the royals and the British public. I would never, big block capitals, behave in such ways and love the royal family very much. This whole situation is an embarrassment to those Americans who are dignified and have manners. Meghan has shamed us all. Well, there we have it. I could not agree more, and I'm going to tell you how things work, because you might not actually know how things work. I touched upon it in my previous video, but I'm going to reiterate. This is almost a rerun of the Charles and Diana saga in the 90s, where Diana was always manipulating and trying to get Charles removed from the line of succession and briefing against him. And Charles ordered that nobody should brief against Diana or respond. Well, everybody ignored him. Not the courtiers, although some did actually ignore him because they thought, we're very sorry, we're not letting Diana have a free pass. But the point is, Charles said no briefing against Diana. And this has happened again. The royal family has asked all of their employees to not comment or brief, and people are doing it unilaterally because they do not agree with the royal family's stance, because they know there are times in life if you do not fight fire with fire, you get scorched, and this is one of those times. This is but one of many people who have links to the court, who have actually been getting in touch with me, and I'm sure with other people as well, and making their feelings known very plainly. Meghan treated people abominably, and I go into a degree of chapter and verse in my book, Meghan and Harry, the real story. Doubtless more will come out, but the reality is none of this is new. And when Meghan and Harry and Oprah and Gayle would like you to believe that it's all fabricated recently by the royal family and their cohorts to discredit sweet baby, dear sweet Megsy Pie, it's not true. It's not true. Sweet, dear, maybe, sweetie Megsy baby Pie is very sweet to those she wants to seduce and impress. And I use the word seduce in its general meaning, because I know from people who know her very well that she can be extremely seductive and plausible. What Meghan lacks, though, is consistency. She also lacks modesty. A good adversary never underestimates the strength or power of his or her opponent. Only a delusional fool thinks, oh, I'm so great and grand that, I'm just going to be able to say that the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, and everybody's just going to believe it because I'm the great me. Now we come to an observation by somebody called Bob Sawyer. And I think it is important to occasionally read out from the thousands of comments along these lines, because it shows that Meghan and Harry are not being smeared by the royal family. They have been unmasked by the public because of their own misconduct. Colour is not the real issue, as Meghan and others are using it as a deflection from the real issues. The real reason why people don't like Meghan is not about colour, it's actually her behaviour. Very well said. Colour is made a distraction from the real issue that Meghan doesn't want to address. People accepted Meghan, and the wedding showed that she was accepted. The real issue is her behaviour. If colour can be the focus, then her behaviour is not looked at. Very well observed, Mrs. Sawyer, or Miss Sawyer, very well observed. And I happen to agree wholeheartedly, and so do thousands of people. So you are not alone. We are maybe the silenced majority, but we are the conscionable majority as well. So now we come to the questions. Branny Drake. I recall years ago in the late 80s or 90s, Oprah had on her show an author who had written a book about being black because of the one-drop theory. Oprah championed the idea. She truly believes if you have a drop of black blood, you are black. I had never heard of such a thing. Her audiences, of course, embraced Oprah's push to make this the truth. Do I agree? Yes, I agree. I think it is mischief-making of the highest order. I think it is supremely racist. I think that it gives weight to one race over another, and it rather puts me in mind of fags at Eton. And for those of you who don't know, fags at Eton were not homosexuals. They were new boys who were effectively servants to senior boys. They were called fags. Fags were often mistreated by the senior boys. Some of them grew up to have compassion. Others grew up to be ace abusers. And I think it is ironic that Black Americans, who certainly were treated appallingly for the better part of 2, if not more, centuries, having finally come out from the shadows of abuse to which they had been subjected, would now be having representatives of their own race trying to do to others what was done to them? No, Oprah, no, no. That's not the way to advance race relations. It is the way for you and Gail and your ilk to gain political capital and maybe even actual financial capital. But it is irresponsible. It is destructive. Some people would even say it is evil. And I actually am one of them. Joanna Horan says, Lady C, please, could you tell us how you think it will end? In divorce, or will they go live a life of happiness? Would so love your opinion on this. I'm not a fortune teller, and I try to never speculate. I would say of my personal experience of people like that, and I had a mother like that, and I had a father like Harry. I used to call him Hero when he really annoyed me. And on more than one occasion, when he really annoyed me, I very naughtily said to him, I have to tell you, Daddy, I have more balls than you and I have none. Very naughty of me. I really was very naughty. And it was disrespectful, but it was also true. And there were times when one needed to speak the truth. Because he used to say, and he was somebody who prided himself on being moral, and he used to say to us, whether your mother is wrong or right, she's right. And I used to say to him, well, that's the ethics of amorality, which it was. So my cutting comments at times didn't come out of nowhere. They came out of calling time on the tune. And it was absolutely true. Men like that are usually completely emasculated by the women, who, on the one hand, sort of consume their masculinity, and on the other hand, play up to it. You know, so the man is caught between the diva and the Jezebel and the shrew, because one minute he is being emasculated and the next he's being puffed up. And when it suits them, it's a very interesting dynamic, and I can see it in operation with Meghan and Harry. You can see how she has him on complete control, but she's feeding his neuroses, etc. How do I think it will end? No matter what the outcome is, it's not going to be good. If they stay together, and my parents stayed together, because my mother didn't have a better option. Had she had a better option, she'd have jumped ship quicker than you could have said boo. But she wasn't going to take the chance of divorcing Daddy, and in those days women didn't get any money, and her mother was not going to be keeping her in the lack of luxury. She would have kept her, you know, in a nice, modest way of life, but not the lavish way of life that my father kept her in. And she wasn't prepared to wait the 2 or 3 years between getting a divorce and remarrying someone else, which in some ways was wise of her. You know, very worldly, very wise. Or if you're an opportunist, you may as well stack the decks in your favor. My God, did she make his life a misery. Even down to when he was dying, she made his life a complete misery. But actually, I'm not right. Not a complete misery. Variable reinforcement is what these women use as a tool of control. So sometimes they're wonderful, usually they're appalling, but sometimes they're wonderful, so that the man is always hooked just enough to remember the halcyon days when he was love-bombed, and he thought he was the center of the opportunist's universe. And what he doesn't realize is he was never a factor. He was never a human being. He was always just supply. He is effectively the Amazon delivery van bringing the goodies from the warehouse. And so that the vehicle will stay operational, the woman has to put petrol in it occasionally and has to be nice to the driver occasionally. It's all a ploy. Don't think with that sort of person. And I'm now speaking about my mother and narcissism. And I would say that Meghan's conduct leads one to the conclusion that she is very much a narcissist. And people like that don't for a second believe that they love anybody. What they love is what you give them. So I personally wouldn't take bets, but if I were Lauren Sanchez, I would make sure that I kept Jeff Bezos well away from Montecito. And on that note, let's go to the next question. It's from Anna Pfeiffer. Do you feel a part of Harry's attraction to Meghan is that her suffering matches his mother's struggles, and she is trying to be Diana number 2? I certainly do. I go into this in my book, and for those of you who haven't read my book, I will touch upon it in rather less detail now. Yes, yes. I think Meghan has played Harry the way Jascha Heifetz played his violin. I think she has, according to other people, and I do agree, I think she has made a study of Diana. It is very, very, very unlikely that Meghan could have replicated Diana's demeanor, her scent, her, or as Americans say, her perfume, or her facial expressions, her language, her approach to everything. I don't think it's accidental. I think that Meghan's playing the role of her life, and Harry is the audience number 1. And she is so caught up in her act that I'm not sure that she has sufficient powers of reasoning to actually understand that often, although Harry, Dumbo that he is buying the act, nobody with any discernment buys the act. And I think that, for instance, accounts for some of the solecisms that she makes. And Diana, it has to be said, often had a very casual relationship with facts as well. If a fact didn't suit her, she'd simply ignore it. And if it suited her to deny it, she denied. So, you know, much of the behavior that Meghan exhibits, Harry is used to, because this is how his mother used to behave. But his mother had virtues that Meghan doesn't have. His mother had genuine warmth. His mother was genuinely, when she chose to be, caring and genuinely affectionate. She also played the victim card for all it was worth. But in a way, she actually was a victim. She simply was not the victim of whom she said she was the victim of. Because she wanted the world to believe that she was the royal family's victim, and certainly Prince Charles's victim, when in fact she was the victim of a very disordered upbringing, a very toxic environment because of her parents, and then dietary habits to lose weight that overtook her. She was also, at 19 years old, you're not really sufficiently, no matter how stable you are, you're not really equipped to have the level of press attention that she had. And that also had a tremendously distorting effect upon her personality. So Diana was a victim. Meghan is not a victim. Meghan was not a victim of her parents. She wasn't a victim of racial prejudice. Meghan is not a victim. Meghan is a perpetrator. The game is called perpetrator as victim. She pretends to Harry and I go into this in my book as well, because it's a psychologically interesting phenomenon, that if you are a perfectly healthy individual who has no victim problems, and you start to pretend that you are a victim, to be convincing, you have to emulate and advocate and feel enough of what you are projecting to let in some of the negative effects of victimhood. And this is what has happened with Meghan. I have no doubt that she now does, to an extent, feel some of what she has been pretending to have been, but never was. She has a choice. If you're not a victim, stand up and be grateful for the fact that you weren't a victim. But that would not have won Harry over. What won him over was, again, the push and pull. She's very good at push and pull. On the one hand, she is the seductress, and on the other hand, she is the dominatrix. And she also, in terms of her persona with Harry, she has been, oh, H, you know, oh, Has, I've just suffered so greatly, you know. I had to work my way through college. Can you believe it? I mean, I have to wait on tables, and I had to get grants, and I had to work my way through college. I mean, and she said it boldly in Fiji, although her father has all of the receipts to prove that it's a complete fabrication. But Harry admires the fact that Meghan has achieved in the face of adversity so much, and she's so strong, you know. H, I'm a really strong woman, you know, you gotta listen to me, you know, I've got the balls that you don't have, H, and I'm just, you know, gung-ho, and you've just gotta listen to me, and you've just gotta understand that you gotta follow me, H. Of course, she doesn't say it like that, but that's the message. And Harry does, because his mother was also extremely dominating. She was very seductive, and she was also very dominating. So there is a tremendous synchronicity there. The whole thing is very Oedipal to those of you who know about Oedipus. The whole thing is very Oedipal. And I would say, looking in on it from the outside, and I could be doing them a grave injustice, and if I am, I will be the first to withdraw the comment that I'm about to make. But looking in from the outside, I think it's really sick. I think it's really sick. I think she has mercilessly played upon his vulnerabilities, and that is not only sick, that's very disturbing. And I think theirs is a very sick relationship. And I think they're two very sick individuals who are deserving of our pity, but also of our cognizance, because they are trying to set themselves up as people we should be following, the cult of Meghan and has, or the cult of megalomaniac and has been about to be, having never been and never was. And I think it's really very, very dangerous, and we need to be aware of the danger, because there are an awful lot of vulnerable people, naive people, innocent people, decent, kind, loving people who will believe all of their rubbish and not see the dangerous on that is so destructive. You know, there was a very good book written many years ago by Ayn Rand. She created the school of objectivism, and she wrote actually two very good books about people who are totally unscrupulous and unconscionable, what we nowadays would call sociopathic. The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. I would recommend to anybody who wants to know what people who are truly unscrupulous and how they will not care the havoc they create as long as they achieve their objectives. Read those books. It's a real education as to how certain people function in the world at large. And I have to tell you, of the way Meghan has been behaving, I have to say I do think that she shows sociopathic tendencies. Next question. Is it true that once Prince Charles becomes king, me again's children will automatically become a prince and princess? And can the Queen do anything behind the scenes to prevent that from happening? Well, under George V's ruling of November 1917, they are automatically princes and princesses once the Queen dies and Prince Charles accedes to the throne. However, there is already a precedent with the Earl and Countess of Wessex, Prince Edward, who is the Queen's third son and fourth child. Prince Edward's children are known as Viscount Severn and Lady Louise Windsor. Notwithstanding the fact that they are actually prince and princess, whatever, of Wessex. So there is already a precedent existent for keeping the periphery of the royals who are entitled to being styled Royal Highness and having the titles of Prince and Princess deprived of them. Now, this, as I have said before, is not a new thing, because Princess Maud, who was Edward VII's granddaughter, when her cousin George V acceded, he actually discouraged her from using the title Princess Maud and made her use the title Countess of Sussexes instead. So there's an old precedent and there's a recent precedent. And Meghan, who knows about this and knows that it has already been under discussion that her children will not be styled Prince and Princess, to keep the focus narrow, she has tried to use that in the Oprah interview and elsewhere, and will doubtless continue to try to use it to make sure that her children are styled Prince and Princess. But it's got nothing to do with race. It's the slimmed down monarchy. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if they decide they're not going to do it as well, because it's their revenge, sweet Megs, because you are such a vicious operator. And you know, the Jamaicans have a saying, you spit in the sky, it will fall in your eye. Well, you've spat in the sky, and hopefully it will fall in your eye. Chaya, very exotic name, says, I have to say, when I first heard you on a talk show, I thought you were overly judgmental. Ah, mad me. And pompous. Well, I don't think I've ever been accused of pomposity before, but here we go. But once I really listened to you explaining things and demonstrating your wit and sarcastic humor. Oh, darling, why sarcastic? Please, ironic. It's much, much gentler. I can't get enough and have become a fan. Thank you very much. Would love to know your opinion on Piers Morgan. And while we're on it, on Sharon Osborne as well. Well, Piers Morgan has turned out to be an accidental collateral damage of Meghan's complaint, which I think is a shocking disgrace, but I've already covered that before, so I'm not going to cover it again. I think, though, it suits Piers because he is going to join Andrew Neil's new station, I think, and he is going to have all the liberty at the previous station. I think it's ironic, actually. You know, I rather like Piers. We're not personal friends, but we know each other. And I like him and I respect him, because with Piers, what you see is what you get. He is really a terrible fulminator. And I mean, he's actually done something, not that he intended to do it, I hasten to add, that has had a serious knock-on effect for me personally. When I appeared on his show, and I was really ambushed. But Piers is very, despite the fact that he's really in love with the sound of his own voice, I think he's basically principled. He has now lost 3 good positions, all of which were as a result of adhering to his principles. The first one was when he lost the editorship of the Mirror, and that was over the abuses that were being done to Iraqi prisoners of war. And he was set up with fake photographs, and he had to fall on his sword. Then he took over from Larry King, and he was dead against the gun laws in America and beat that hobby horse until it got legs and ran him out of the studio and out of America. But you could say he was adhering to his principles. And last but not least, he has said for some time now that he thinks that Meghan is a fraud and a phony in one way or the other. And he said he didn't believe a word she said in the Oprah interview. And it has to be said, evidently the vast majority of the British population and people in the Commonwealth don't believe a word of what she said either. So, but Caroline McCall, the CEO, demanded that he apologize because she quivered and quaked when she got a complaint personally from Meghan. I mean, honestly, you know, woman, man up. I mean, I hate to put it like that, but woman up, woman up. I mean, really, honestly. And dismissed him effectively. Well, so that's Piers. I actually have respect for him. I think he should not have left. I think he should not have been made to leave. I think it's a great scandal that he was made to leave. And I only hope that he costs the station and the company a vast sum of money. But he might well not. So that's Piers. Sharon Osborne looks as if she's going to have to fall on her sword, and if she doesn't, they're going to do to her what they used to do in ancient Rome to those who refused to fall on their swords. They would simply send in people to make sure that their blood was let, let's put it that way. She evidently is digging in her heels and saying, right, if you get rid of me, you're going to have to pay me the tens of millions of dollars that would have been my due under the terms of my contract with you. And I think good for her. Sharon Osborne is, if she has to resign, if she is made to resign, is the victim of reverse racism. I think she is the victim of pro-racist. Piers' objection to Meghan has absolutely nothing to do with colour. It's all to do with character. And I actually struggle to comprehend why the Oprahs and Gayle Kings of this world, who are really very sophisticated and have achieved great success by being very, very dexterous as they negotiated their way through the minefield that is American television, why they pretend, well, in fact, I know the reason, they pretend that this issue is racial because it suits their agenda. But they are really, in my opinion, pro-racism. And it's against people who are not racist. Because there's no way you can look at Piers and think he's racist. And Sharon Osborne is being accused of all sorts of racist comments all of a sudden, but when she was Flavour of the Week and Flavour of the Month and Flavour of the Year, they weren't accusing her of anything, although these comments evidently go back sometimes years, and all of a sudden these are being trotted out to get rid of her. I'm sorry, it's racist. I mean, White people should be allowed to say that they think that crooked black people are crooks, just as how black people should be allowed to say that they think that crooked white people are crooks. And there we have it in a nutshell. Next question. Jacqueline Johnston. I don't understand how Meghan condemns her father for talking to the media about their private issues, but she does the same damn thing. Yes, well, there we have it, don't we? It's called double standards. It's called hypocrisy. It's called one rule for the goose and another for the gander. It's called being too clever by half, stupid by whole, delusional, narcissistic, egotistical, and impertinent. It's called treating us, the public, as if we are dolts, when in fact she's married to a dolt and she should be looking in the mirror to see if maybe she's not catching up with him in the dolt stakes. Hosseina Noordeem says, and this is an observation, and I am using it because I think it summarizes everything that needs to be said. If my children washed our family's dirty linen in public, let alone on international TV, I would not tolerate them back in my midst. The royal family is exceptionally tolerant. Well, yes, the royal family is exceptionally tolerant because when you are dealing with people who are basically disordered, you have a high tolerance for unacceptable behavior. I know what I'm talking about. I've done it for much of my life. Also, you know, if you are at all religious, and the Queen certainly is, and Prince Charles is very spiritual. I don't think Prince William is quite that spiritual or religious, but I think he will have absorbed enough from his father and grandparents, because Prince Philip is also very spiritual. You live up to your duty, and children owe parents obligations. Loved ones owe other loved ones duties. And just because you have a disturbed and very disturbing member of your family doesn't mean that you completely dehumanize them or yourself. This is the dilemma of coping with disordered people. So yes, the royal family is exceptionally tolerant, but anybody who has lived with very disordered people will know that families often are very tolerant up to a point. Well, my understanding is that Prince William is the one who has a real mettle in this situation. And of course, he's the one who is most wounded as well, because he loved Harry, and most likely still does love Harry. You don't stop loving somebody who's turned just because they've turned. I mean, you may start to protect yourself against that person. And of course, the royal family is aware that if they do not handle things with a degree of delicacy and decorum, that Meghan and Harry, to a lesser extent, will run and run and run with this. And since you are dealing with people whose parameters factually do not coincide with the vision that other people would have of the realities, truth becomes a very elastic thing, often spelt L-I-E. And it therefore becomes, where next is the missile going to come from? And that is the problem with dealing with people who are very disordered. They have no respect for the truth. They have no respect for decency. They have no respect for justice, for fair play. These are all concepts that they use to weaponize themselves as they are attacking you, but they never use them to modify their conduct. It is a very difficult situation for the royal family to find themselves in, and I think this one is going to play and play and play. But I'll tell you what I think is already happening is that the powers that be, and I'm not referring now to the British royal family or the British court or indeed the British government, I'm now referring to the Bill and Melinda Gateses of this world and the Michelle and Barack Obamas of this world. These are serious heavy hitters. These are serious power players. And you will watch and see, because I think that they are already aware, just by their lacks of comments or their measured comments, that they need to tread with great caution, because if they continue to be supporters of Meghan and Harry, their reputations, their long-term goals will be jeopardized by Meghan and Harry's unpredictable and unethical and wild card ways of behaving. So the danger Meghan and Harry run, if they continue playing the game they're playing, is the danger Diana ran when she did her dirty. But she was astute enough to try to hop back into the bandwagon. She never succeeded fully. Would she have succeeded had she remained alive? I doubt it. Spoilt goods are always spoilt. But the public would not have realized with the passage of time, because things are cobbled together, and how you feel privately is not the face that you present to the public. And on that note, I will end with a comment from Tommy Moore. Where's Henry VIII when we need him? Oh dear. Thank you very much. I love that comment. Where is Henry VIII when we need him? Where is he indeed? Oh, dead a long time ago. And yes. Thank you very much for your comments. Do please keep the comments and questions coming in. And please like, share, hit the notification bell and subscribe. Thank you so much.